artists and songs and music and everything that we have flowing through, and it's always a great pleasure to be able to interact personally with different artists and churches and people who are writing and creating great music. And this team from Elevation Worship has definitely become, you guys have just harvested a great voice in America for songs that are really going all around the world, and we're really excited for you guys and happy to have you on board. So why don't you just introduce yourselves, who you are, and then I actually have a picture of the whole Elevation Worship team, and I'd like to just have you tell us about who the whole team is and even introduce all of them to us by face, even though they all aren't on the team. So welcome here. Tell us who you are together, and then we'll continue on.
Okay. Hey, guys, this is Mac Brock, one of the worship leaders, and with me is...
Hi, I'm London Gatch, also one of the staff worship leaders here at Elevation Church.
And so just a quick introduction of the people that you're looking at in this picture. It's kind of funny. Our team just grows really quick and really fast. This picture was probably taken less than a year ago, and already it's like missing several people. But starting from the left, we got Jane Williams, we got Brad Hudson, Andrea Smith, Chris Brown, that's London, and then that's Wade Joy, who's our worship pastor, and then that's me, Mac.
We also have...
Well, that's what you look like, Matt.
Say what?
Go ahead. I said, that's what you look like. Okay, so now I know who I'm looking at.
Yes,
I can hear the Canadian coming through. Oh, that's
yes.
Also on our team, we have Brandon Jesmer, and Alex Duncan is actually the worship leader at our Toronto location.
That's great. So you have, and how many churches are there? How many churches are there around the nation? Maybe just give us a sense of how wide the scope is of Elevation Church.
We just this past weekend launched our 10th location, and we've got 9 locations in kind of the Charlotte area, and that includes, some neighboring cities like Rock Hill, which is in South Carolina, and then we've got 1 location in Toronto, Canada.
Yes. Go Canadians, go.
Yes, we love our Toronto campus.
Right on. Well, I'm looking forward to this time together. You guys have just launched your 3rd album, I believe, today. Is that right? Today, 1/14/14. Is that the date that you guys have been looking forward to for quite some time with this new album that's come out?
Yes, it's a big day for us. As all of you can imagine, you work on a project for a long time, and you have kind of different banner points of, when we were finished with the recording, when we were finished with the mix, and now kind of this is like the party that we celebrate everything. So we're excited that it's finally out.
Totally.
Well, this is great. A good handful of these songs we've actually been singing in our church for like over a year now. So it's so great to like finally, be able to get it into the hands of the people of our church and beyond.
Yeah. That's awesome. Well, I'll tell you what I'm hoping that we can do today together as we talk about this is we have a lot of worship leaders, musicians, and songwriters even who are listening in, and I really hope that just through the story and testimony of the work that you guys are doing, we can be an encouragement to other churches and other songwriters and worship leaders, especially the songwriters out there who are writing songs and, thinking about wanting to put their own voice together and share it with their church or their community or whatever the scope is that they may have. So I'm just hoping that you guys can join me as we have, hundreds of people who are listening in and really want to be an encouragement to them. Something that, just to give a little context that we have going on right now, we actually are a part of a songwriting kind of showcase where people from all around the world have been submitting music into this for the last 6 months, and just this last Saturday, we have been able to start showcasing the top 25 songs. It's called the Christian Songwriting Competition 2013. And so I've just been really encouraged as I've been listening to all these kind of grassroots, songwriters who've been submitting their songs. None of these people are published or have recording contracts and all that kind of stuff. These are just people who are really trying to, learn the craft of writing songs. And so we are putting these songs in front of the whole Praise Charts audience, and many, many people have been coming in and downloading audio and chord charts and lead sheets. All the music is free, and we're going to be kind of promoting that for the next couple of weeks. So we're just kind of in this whole spirit in Praise Charts of really trying to encourage and equip the church. And, in some ways this is a way of highlighting the work and ministry of Elevation Church and Elevation Worship, but we also want to use the story that you guys have done to turn back encouragement and the flame to all the other churches, and they can be thinking, we could do this too. We could have a greater vision, to develop our ministry and develop the relationships and develop our teams, and that's the heart and spirit of what we want to do. So do you guys agree with that?
Yeah, we are obviously all about the local church. It's the most powerful force that we believe that Jesus and God is, poured into the world is the church. And, for us, it's really important to write songs that come out of the story of what God is doing at Elevation. But we also, are very encouraging for other worship leaders to do the same. And, you talk a lot about we want to be a resource to the church. That's totally our heart as well. And for, this album, we spent so much kind of just time and effort to, figure out ways to resource other churches through this album. And so on our website, elevationworship.com, we've got so many free resources specific to this album that include, loops for the songs. It includes, acoustic versions. If you don't have a full band, you can, listen and be encouraged. This is how you could pull it off with a really minimal setup. But then we've also got guitar tutorials, key tutorials, and drum tutorials for every song on the album. Just, as you're building your team, we know that, just because we've experienced this too, we know that every worship team starts out somewhere, and not everybody, you start off with the musicians that you have that are committed to the church, and some of them are really great, and some of them are learning and are new, and so we wanted to create something that would just be really easy to learn, easy to pick up, and to be encouraged, and to be challenged. So we're, that just as much as we're excited about the album, we're so excited about these resources and being able to get them in front of other churches, just, to pour into what God is doing beyond Charlotte and beyond Toronto, and, where he's moving in other local churches.
Yeah, that's so great. I'm just thinking, 15 years ago, when you would have recorded an album, basically the output of that is you're just trying to get people to download the music so they can listen to it. It's a pretty passive kind of experience. But we live in an age and an era now, and especially with this worship music you guys are putting out, where it's so much more than just download and, stick it in the radio and listen. You're releasing a whole experience where people can see it, touch it, get their own guitar, learn how to play it in all different formats, loops. It's an experience of, engaging with the music through the resources. So I think that's something very unique about worship music, is it's not just music to listen to, it's music to sort of participate in and get out your instrument and, and join with it. That's probably one of the reasons why I, have pretty much dedicated my life to, resourcing of the church, specifically with worship music, because I'm so inspired by how, participatory it is. It's not a passive thing. You know, we're trying to get out the charts and the tracks and even the orchestrations that we do. And we've orchestrated several of your songs from other albums where we can get trumpets and saxophones and flutes and strings and all the instruments that were talked about in the Psalms. Psalm 149 and 150 talks about all these different instruments and just creating that sound of worship. So that's wonderful.
Yeah, we agree.
Right on. Well, I'll tell you what, before we go into the whole album and the songs, I'd like to talk through, at least highlight maybe half a dozen or so songs that have become, really etched into the culture of your church, and you're finding that other churches maybe could start to pick up. But let's just go a little bit back into some of the story, the bedrock of who Elevation Church is, because it seems from what you're sharing that these albums are growing out of the culture and the story of your church. So when did the church start? And tell us a little bit about who the pastor is and, what was the need? What's the area like? What was the climate and the culture out of which the whole Elevation church and worship grew out of?
Yeah, so Elevation Church started about 8 years ago with, was it 7 core families or 8 core? 7 core families. So Pastor Stephen and his wife Holly and a few other families basically moved to Charlotte to plant Elevation Church. And, the rest is history. And so sort of Pastor Stephen is not only, a brilliant pastor and preacher, but he's also a worship leader. And so when the church started, using the resources that he had, he would preach and lead worship. So he'd lead worship, put his guitar down, run over to the pulpit and preach a sermon. So obviously that's a lot of work and pressure, and God started to bring the right people into Pastor Stephen's life and to the church. So a couple years after he planted the church, the Lord brought Mac, which obviously is here in this conversation, Chris Brown and Wade Joy, who's our worship pastor. And he just really felt like God called him to hire all 3 of them at the same time, to bring them on to sort of launch the culture here of Elevation Worship. I came on about a year later, and it's just been an amazing thing just to witness. Pastor Stephen really challenged us that he wants the culture here of worship to be very celebratory. And so a lot of the songs that we write, we actually, like Mac mentioned earlier, we write, specifically for what our people are walking through. And at our church, like many other churches, we do a sermon series. So Pastor Stephen will have a couple different, sermon series throughout the year, 4 weeks, 6 weeks, however long they are. And so it's been cool for us to, just get the vision of what God's speaking to Pastor Stephen through these sermon series, and us to be able to actually give a voice to our people through our music. So that's been, I would say that's a really big place that a lot of our songs originate, or out of sermon series, or just things that Pastor Stephen is, feeling for the church, for the climate of the church.
It's very unique to be able to have a senior pastor who has a background as a worship leader, because oftentimes there's a big gap between the world of the senior pastor, whose head is into thinking about just the sermon and kind of that half an hour segment that he has, and then you have the worship leader, and it's two worlds. So do you guys find that it's much it's much easier to have kind of a flow between the world of what Pastor Stephen is breathing in your church, and also the worship leader? And how is he able to really be an encouragement to you guys as a worship ministry?
Well, we're very aware that in a lot of churches, and it's really sad, but in a lot of churches, the lead pastor and the worship leader have a lot of conflict. And, some of that stems from maybe the pastor doesn't know much about music or, something like that. But a lot of times it's just, maybe like a communication breakdown. And that's something, Pastor Stephen has always been really great at communicating to us his vision and the heart behind why we do what we do, so that, he's not saying, hey, I really want to play this song just because, I really want you to do this just because it's my preference and that's what I want. A lot of times he's saying, like, hey, we really need to play this song because, this reason and that reason or whatever. And so for coming in from the top, we're allowed to connect so much. It's so much easier to connect to the vision of the church being that close to, like, the vision and the heart of the church. And so, there's not tension. There's not, like, a weirdness, this, like, kind of us versus them mentality at all. It's, all together, all in this together, under the vision of Pastor Stephen, for the vision of Elevation Church. So.
Yeah, that's a great thing. I was just telling everybody beforehand that, we're up here and having a little retreat, a planning retreat, and so I have some key members of our Praise Charts team. And so yesterday we were having breakfast, and I happened to see a friend of mine, and he leads an organization that plants churches all across Canada, and he was having breakfast with his leadership team. So both of us were kind of doing the same thing. We found the same place and took our teams out to have this planning session. Anyway, so Gord and I were having a little conversation. He was telling me about, all these churches. I think they have about 100 churches that they're involved in planting around Canada right now. And he was just saying that as they are leading and equipping and training all these churches, it's not just senior pastors that they're trying to develop, because they're recognizing how important and significant it is to raise up artists, worshipers. And when I say artists, I don't mean that in sort of the Nashville sense, but more in the, people that think and dream and communicate on a more artistic level. And of course, music is a huge, huge part of that. But how significant that is in our churches today. And I don't think it's just like a modern contemporary thing. It's the way God designed us to be artistic people. And it's very important, I think, that, senior pastors, and I don't know how many senior pastors might be listening in here, but just how important it is that we recognize the significance of the ministry of the arts and music, and, pulling it all together and trying not to live in these, separate worlds as churches are being led. So you seem to really be doing that well at Elevation, and it's an encouragement, I think, hopefully, to people who are listening.
Thank you.
Yeah. So I had an experience a couple of years ago at a church that I was attending, and our senior pastor he wasn't a musician per se, but he would always be in that front row, both hands in the air, full on, heart, sing it out at the top of his lungs. And in some ways, he was like leading the church who was following the worship leader, but it was just a real visual sense of the senior pastor is engaged and he is a worshiper. So I think that's really, really great and important.
Yeah.
Well, let's take some time to talk through some of the songs that you guys are excited about with this new album, Only King Forever. So why don't we talk about that song to start, since it's a song that seems to have cast a theme over the whole album, and the title track. So as we go through these songs, maybe you can just tell me, who wrote them, if there's a little story behind them, what the key theme is, some musical elements or things like that.
Okay.
Any kind of specific resources that you want to, draw our attention to, and we'll try and link to those or, draw people's attention. So let's just start making our way through maybe half a dozen or so songs. And then just before we go into this, as we're talking about this, those of you who are listening, I just want to remind you that we're going to have a a question and answer kind of time. So if you want to use the little button up in the top left of your screen, and you can ask any question just about, relationships or, leadership or musicianship, how they, put their teams together, how they do practices, auditions, all these kinds of dynamics that go on in a worship ministry. If you have any questions like that, you can ask those, and then I will have a time of interaction at the end. So let's start looking at some of the songs, and Only King Forever. Let's start with that one.
Okay. I know we're kind of up against the clock, so I'll go through some of the questions, starting with Only King Forever, or some of the songs, I mean. So Only King Forever was the first song that we wrote for the album. We just felt like this song kind of set, the precedent for what we wanted this album to be about, and what we wanted these songs to kind of, the general theme, be about, and that is that God is the eternal King. Things in the world are going to fade, that God is like the King forever, which that alone is, makes him worthy of our praise and worthy of our adoration. But not only that, but he has brought us in as his children. So we're children of the King. So we just really, wanted to explore themes of that throughout this record. And, just kind of declare, like, one, you're God. You're worthy of our praise. And we are grateful and thankful that you have called us your own. So Only King Forever kind of really sets the stage for that throughout the album. That's one of the reasons, that's the reason why we named the album that. It's the reason why we started off with that song. Just a handful of other ones that are really special to us right now in our church.
Yes, tell us.
Is one of the most powerful ones is a song called Grace So Glorious. And that's, I don't know, it's almost like a hymn that was written that just kind of, I don't know, it's just been so powerful for our church. It talks about, kind of just the story of Jesus' glory and, how he sacrificed. We were in darkness, and because of Jesus, because he died for our sins and he rose from the grave, like, we're alive. And so, the chorus is just kind of declaring over and over again that we're going to give you glory. We're going to crown you in glory forever. That's going to be our song on earth. That's going to be our song when we're in heaven with him. That's like the eternal praise that we're going to give him. That song's been really powerful for us. We actually co-wrote that song with Israel Houghton, who I'm sure a lot of y'all know.
Yes.
And he's close friends with our church and our pastor, and has spent a lot of time with us. So it's always good, to work on music with him. Maybe two other songs that I really wanted to highlight. One is a song called Last Word. And that song, all of these songs we've been playing in our church for a long time now, but Last Word, I think, is really special. Just every time we've led it, it's just carried. You don't lead. A lot of times you'll lead a song the first time, and it's really hard to gauge, is this a good song or not, because no one really knows it, and there's no one singing along, and you got to give it, one or two more times. But Last Word was a song that, like, right off the bat, really connected with our people and really kind of set this stage for people being set free. The theme of the song is, we're going to go through hard times. We're going to go through struggles. We're going to walk in darkness, but we're not bound by the rules of the world. We're not bound by whatever situation or circumstance that we're in. That God has the last word. He's speaking over every situation in our lives. And so because of that, it's just such a powerful song to sing. The chorus is, you have the last word, it is finished. My fear is silenced in your love. My hope is endless. And so it's not, it doesn't beat around the bush that we're going to go through trouble, that we are going to be scared, we're going to be upset and face sadness. But regardless of that, our hope is in Jesus. And so we can walk through anything with our hope anchored in him. And then the last song I wanted to touch on was a song called Raised to Life. And that's a song that we wrote specifically for a series that we were doing about baptism, and we were going to have baptisms at our church this past summer. And so this song, it was a challenge from Pastor Stephen to write a song for this series for baptisms that we would sing, as people were coming down the aisle, as people were being literally like dunked in the water and raised out of the water.
Yeah.
And so Raised to Life kind of came out of that vision. And it's just, for me now to lead that song and to hear that song, all I see is like the vision of, we saw over 2,000 people be baptized in 2 weeks, of all these people, coming out of the water, literally being like raised to life. And so there's just a lot of power in that imagery for us as we lead it. But just the story of that song, the verses just kind of declare again the progression of like Jesus setting us free and what it means to, find our life in Jesus. Like we are literally like raised to life through Christ. And because of that, we're going to just sing his name. And, it's kind of cool on that song, the bridge is really interesting to lead because the bridge is sin was strong, but Jesus is stronger. Our shame was great, but Jesus, you're greater. And, when you're kind of leading a song and you sing something like sin was strong or my shame was great, it feels a little bit awkward.
Daunting. Yes.
But it's so powerful to admit that, man, our sin was strong and the darkness in our lives was like very real, and shame and guilt are very real. But in the very same breath, I'm going to declare that Jesus is bigger and stronger than any of that stuff. So, that song, again, we led that song this past weekend at our church, and it's just, to declare that with so many people has so much power.
Yeah. I think it's really great to have a song like Raised to Life that's very specifically written for baptisms, and whether people are singing it during the baptisms or doing a video, a recap of baptisms that happen while they're singing that song or something, but just that's a wonderful song to be able to add to a repertoire that a church would have, something that's just really powerful. And perhaps what's even more powerful about that song is that, just like what you're saying, if you can identify a song like that with the experience of all the baptisms, and then when you re-sing the song in other services, it's just going to bring back that whole experience to life, just exactly like what you're experiencing. And so that's wonderful. Hey, while you guys have been talking, we've had quite a few people wanting to ask some questions. So do you mind if I ask you just some of the nuts and bolts practicalities about how worship ministry flows and works in Elevation?
Yeah, go for it.
So, all right. So, so Mark asks, would you describe the differences between the role of worship pastor and worship leaders? Well, that's a great question. So how does that work? I think you have Pastor Wade Joy. He is the worship pastor, right? And then you have a bunch of worship leaders.
Right. Honestly, I don't really know how it's set up at other churches. But for Elevation Church in particular, Wade Joy is our worship pastor, but he's also our service programming director. And so Wade kind of wears like a million hats. And so he's not only over all of worship, but he is over the flow of the weekend experience.
Right.
And then coming under Wade, myself, Mac, and Chris, and then others on the team under us, we just sort of all hold up Wade's arms, and he, delegates to us all the different, tasks and duties to make the worship team and service and kind of like programming run smoothly. we all sort of have our different areas of focus.
The other thing about
Wade is also go ahead.
Well, Wade is just like literally, his title fits him well. He's like the pastor of the worship department, and so he's got so much responsibility, but he just leads us. Spiritually, he leads us. He spends a lot of time, probably close to anyone else on staff, with Pastor Stephen. So he's all about communicating Pastor Stephen's heart to us for big things, big picture things, to also small things. So Wade leads a lot of things from a tangible standpoint, but he also leads. He's very pastoral too.
Right.
Pastoral.
Sounds like Wade is creating a culture, though, that creates breathing room for other worship leaders to rise up under him. So it's not just I'm the worship pastor, I'm the worship leader, and everybody else can,
That's totally the case. Every worship leader that's on staff under his leadership, we've all got, I guess, more specified areas that we work in and what we do. And he just, he's all about, raising us up and letting us do what we're called to do in our ministry.
Yeah. Jaron is asking, are you guys writing your songs in planning for your series, your sermon series, or as a response to messages in the series? So are you kind of like trying to write them on the front end or
it's
after?
Both. It's both. Pastor Stephen is, he plans ahead. And so we know what sermon series are coming up months and months in advance. And so sometimes, like I said, for Raise to Life, we'll write that song specifically for that series. And that's like a few months before the series. But then there are a lot of times, that we write songs that are just coming out of where we're at, and challenges that we're facing from hearing his messages, and being challenged as a church.
Tell me a little bit about the songwriting culture at Elevation. So how do songs find their way into the flow? Is it mostly your staff that's writing them, or can anybody come to you and say, I've written a song, and, wondering if we can, what's the path for a song to find its life in your church and actually make it to the, to Sunday morning and then even onto an album?
We've got a couple of different ways that we approach it. We have several writing retreats.
Right.
Throughout the year, not several. I mean, we had a handful. Usually like a seasonal writing retreat that we'll go on as a worship team and spend a couple of days just writing and kind of pouring into that. We also throughout the week try to find specific time. Usually right now we're in a season where right now every Wednesday we're writing songs together, and that's a handful of us. Then we also even have just a Dropbox set up to where people can, from anybody on our team, from all of our musicians, other worship leaders that aren't on staff, can submit song ideas that they have. And we try to, get feedback. If someone submits an idea, one of the lead worship leaders will submit some sort of feedback hey, this is a great verse, the chorus needs work, or, we try to be really specific about how to grow and how to get better, not just saying oh yeah, I heard your song, yeah, it was cool, so what's next? We want to give good feedback to, all of us grow together.
I love that idea. That's a very practical, tangible thought that anyone listening here could apply that. Just create a Dropbox, share it with your team, and just say, here's a little community place where if you've got even a bridge or a verse or a lyric or whatever it is, it could be an MP3, it could be a text file, it could be anything, you could put it into there and create it as a, it's kind of at least there's a place to put something, and then you're saying, go ahead.
I think the biggest thing is creating a culture though of positivity and vulnerability. And when you're submitting a song like on Dropbox and you like track this kind of crummy voice memo, and it's not a finished song, but it's just an idea, and it just kind of sounds bad, and it's not like where the song's going to end up. It's like really vulnerable to post that for a lot of people to hear. And so we've really, we spent a lot of time like casting the vision with our team. Like that's okay. Like it's not going to be great. We've played for our church, like our entire church, voice memos of songs that we first came out with that we sent to each other, so that they can see the contrast between where a song starts and where it ends. And it's it can be like embarrassing and like I said, like vulnerable, but it's so important to like put yourself out there, because that's how you're going to get better and that's how you're going to grow. And so we always have kind of created that culture of like, don't be afraid to, send something that's not finished, and we'll try to make it better, and we'll try to make it great. Then again, like we always try to like find the positive things too. You don't want to, as soon as someone submits an idea, be like, oh, well, that lyric sucks. That's not original, and the melody is lame. We find the things that are good about it, the things that you can build off of to make it great.
Yeah. I think it's a great word that just to encourage churches that are listening in, and is to be intentional about creating that culture, that positive, inviting culture. That all of us know that songwriting is a vulnerable thing, to submit that thing and wonder, are people going to like it? Are they going to say negative things or whatever? But I think as churches, we need to work at creating that culture that invites, people to put out their creative heart and work together to make the songs great. And so that's an encouraging word to hear that.
Yeah.
Elias, I'm just going to keep going through here. Lots of good questions coming in. Elias says, we have seen worship change drastically in the last 5 or 10 years. Where and how do we see worship changing in the next 5 or 10 years? Interesting. You guys see things moving or changing, flowing in our world of worship music?
Yeah. Just so you know, Ryan, because I don't want to get cut off, we have to leave in 5 minutes. So I didn't want to.
Okay.
I just wanted to give you the heads up. But as far as where worship is going, I don't know. I honestly don't really know how to answer that question. I feel, it's tough. I feel like I can only really speak to what Elevation's doing, and I've seen how we've grown as songwriters and how we've grown even just as musicians and producers in creating our music. I feel like we've taken another step towards like a richness and kind of a uniqueness in our approach to our lyrics that, I don't know, the biggest thing is like finding the words that people want to sing, that connect to their hearts, that they want to sing in a room full of thousands of other people. It's finding those words that aren't just, words that they just, kind of spit out because they're the ones in front of them, but words that, like, I want to sing that God has the last word. I want to sing that Jesus is stronger than anything in this world. And so, for us, lyrics have been like a huge focus in the last several years of like really not settling, like digging deep. If you saw the revisions of our songs and you saw like where songs started and how many times, Grace the Glorious is a good example. We've been playing that song in our church for like 3 months before the live recording. And the week before the live recording, we like totally scrapped the verse. We rewrote an entire new verse. We scrapped parts of the song. And it's just, you know, we always want to be progressing and making it great and not settling. And, you know, a lot of times it's really easy to say, like, okay, finally finished, I'm done. And then you have that kind of nagging feeling that you know you're not done, but it just feels so good to be done that you don't want to you don't want to work on it anymore. And it's just pushing through that and digging deeper and taking it to that next level.
So, you know, as you've been talking, I have a thought as to an answer where I think worship may be going in the future, in the next 5 or 10 years, and it's very reflective of what you guys have done. And that is, I think we're going to see more and more great worship songs coming from churches. And, you know, because churches are developing in technology and developing musicianship, and there's greater abilities to just be, you know, more excellent in our artistry in churches. So I think perhaps in the last 10 or 20 years, it's maybe weighed more towards artists, you know, the Nashville kind of artist that is touring around. But it's very encouraging. I'm always encouraged to see churches who are taking on this mantle for themselves of going, we can write songs in here and develop the world of artists. So you guys are doing that, and we're seeing a lot of churches that are seeing that. And I think that's a real positive direction to see.
And that's a good point. You bring up a good point about, you know, artists and musicians, and it's just, that's another thing, you know, we've got 10 campuses, and every campus has like all these musicians. We don't have like an acoustic campus. We're all like full bands. But that's because like we've seen like a shift in the culture of guys, talented musicians that want to invest in the local church and want to, you know, pour into something that they believe in and that they can rally behind.
Yeah, for sure. Hey, you guys have been wonderful, and I know you have to go because you got a busy day ahead of you with this album going live, and lots of people are taking it in. So we're really thrilled to get behind you in this. We've got all the charts on Praise Charts. You've got lots of other resources at Elevation Worship on your website, and so just want to encourage people to make themselves available of all these resources and listening to the songs, and just want to encourage you guys. Thank you for being such a great encouragement to us and for putting out your voice, sharing that with us. And I hope you guys have a great day as you continue on and sharing the news and all of this music. So it's wonderful. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thanks so much for having us. Also,
you're welcome.
Just wanted to say later this evening at 8 o'clock on the Elevation Network, so it's elevationnetwork.com, we're actually going to get like the whole team together and do a bunch of the songs all together on the network. So that'll be a lot of fun. So if anyone wants to join us, elevationnetwork.com.
Right on.
Yeah.
That's great.
Thanks, Ryan, so much, and everyone for tuning in.
Okay, thank you very much, guys.
Thanks, Ryan.
It's great to have you. Okay.
See you guys.
So all right, see you then. So those of you who are listening in, we're just going to wrap it up in a couple of minutes here, but I just wanted to encourage, I hope those of you who are listening who are songwriters or you're leaders of potential songwriters, that you're feeling encouraged about how you can, stir up this whole culture of songwriting and to believe that you can contribute to the whole world of worship songs and songwriting and recording and all of that. This is the world that we are living in and where things are kind of moving in the next 5 and 10 years. So like I had said in the beginning of our time together, we have a whole songwriting showcase that we are promoting right now. It's called the Christian Songwriting Competition, and there's 25 songs that have kind of percolated to the top so far. So we're trying to get some feedback from all of you who are part of the Praise Charts world on those songs. You can go in, you can make social comments and download audio and print all for free. So that's all on our site. You can get there from our homepage. Next week, I am doing a webinar with probably one of the foremost Christian songwriters in our nation. His name is Jason Ingram. And many of you probably wouldn't know of him as an artist because he's really one of the guys that's behind so many great songs. He writes alongside guys like Matt Redman and Chris Tomlin and Reuben Morgan from Hillsong, and just many people he is involved in co-writing with. And then he has his own band that they put together called One Sonic Society, which has got great songs in it. So Jason really, really has a handle on songwriting, and I was able to meet with him a couple of months ago at a worship conference up in Seattle, and I chatted with him kind of backstage, and we just really had about 5 or 10 minutes together, but just really connected on a great level. And I thought, I'd love to spend some time with him on the phone in a webinar like this. So he has agreed to do that, and you do not want to miss our time together next week at this time. So thanks to all of you who have been listening in. That'll be next week, Tuesday, same time at 9 a.m. Pacific, which is 12 p.m. Eastern time. That's when we do these. And if you can't make it, we will record it and make that available so you can listen to the streaming version after that. But Happy New Year to all of you. Oh, you know what? There's another really cool thing I wanted to share, if some of you are still with me, is that during the Christmas season at Praise Charts, we did this thing called the 12 Days of Christmas, where every day for 12 days we were giving away something. And so people would get the emails and just have to click to qualify to win, and then at the very end we would go through and pick someone. So we've got a whole bunch of people that have won some great stuff, and we're going to be posting a list of all those winners. The most fun was the story about when we were able to give away the Duncan Africa guitar, which was the last day. There was something very special about that, is that instead of just trying to win that guitar for yourself, people would come in and nominate someone else to win the guitar, and then write a little story about why they, how they appreciated that person and why they felt like they would be a great person to be able to receive this guitar. So we had hundreds and hundreds, almost 1,000 people write in, and really great stories. Just honoring and appreciating worship leaders and musicians and pastors, and it's the worship laborers that are out there. So unfortunately, only one of those people could actually win the guitar, and we were able to find a winner. But I also was able to get permission from many of the people who wrote these nominations, and we've created a blog post where we're just going to post all of these comments just as a way of honoring and appreciating many that were acknowledged in their ministry and their hearts. So it's really neat because I actually recorded the phone call where I phoned the person that won the guitar, and then I had him on the line together with me, and we phoned his son, who he had nominated, while he was at work, and we were able to tell him that he won the guitar. It was a really special moment. And I recorded the whole experience, got permission from them so that we could put it together and share that with all of you. So if you guys want to listen to that experience of us giving away that guitar, and that will be next week that we'll make that available. And funny thing, I just got news this morning, is a really neat other story, is someone had emailed us this morning and said, I just love the whole way that this guitar giveaway has gone. It's such a great story. And their person didn't win, but they're like, we want to just buy a Duncan Africa guitar and give it to the person that we had nominated. So we're going to have to pass that news on to Jay Duncan. I'm sure he'll be thrilled with that. But just a really neat spirit of giving and honoring and appreciation and all of that came out of that in almost an unexpected way last week. So just very grateful to all of you who participated in that with us, and we'll be able to share that starting next week. So thank you, and we'll look forward to meeting with all of you again next Tuesday with Jason Ingram. That's going to be a great time together. But other than that, hope that you guys can be an encouragement to the team at Elevation Church. Pick up their album at iTunes, and you can get the charts in Praise Charts. They also have a bunch of resources at their church website, elevationworship.com. So I encourage you to pick up some of that, and most of all, encourage you to think about what are the things that you can do to sort of step up your sense of confidence and, kind of proactive. What are the things that you can do in your church to just believe in the artists and the worship leaders and the songwriters that you guys can develop, and not just perceive, but also participate and write and create. I really believe that that's an important message for us to take in. So hope you guys are all encouraged with that. It's been great sharing this time together with you, and I'm going to sign off from Langley, British Columbia. It's kind of a cloudy day here, but we're going to go and enjoy the rest of the day here. God bless you all. Many people from all around the world, Jakarta, Indonesia, Malaysia, various people woke up in the middle of the night to come and listen in live. So thanks especially to those of you who did that. Appreciate all of you and the hard work you guys do in your worship ministries. And we're just thrilled to be able to support and encourage you. All right. God bless you all. Talk to you later.